Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Honorable Amina Yaya, President of the Pan-African Parliament's Women's Caucus. I want to acknowledge the presence of the ambassadors, Ambassador Andre Zapayake and Ambassador of Egypt. I'm sorry I didn't catch the name, but just want to acknowledge your presence. Thank you so much. And my brother, Honorable President of the Pan-African Parliament, Senator Chief Fortune Charumbira. I really enjoyed the passion with which you discussed this issue, and I see that you have not changed over the years. So congratulations and thank you so much. And I recognize all the honorable members of Parliament representing our beloved continent. President, I also want to acknowledge my MPs who are here, who represent me in my country, Kenya, who are also here, and I want to acknowledge them. There's one MP, actually, who's my MP from my village. There's an honorable MP. So I have to be very careful that as I say what I say, I hope that it reflects that that's already happening in the village, because we have to be ahead of the curve. But in any case, I stand here representing the United Nations. I am here on behalf of the United Nations Joint Program on HIV and AIDS. And I know many times I appear places and people ask me, is there still AIDS? And so as Africans, I think it's so important that we take on the fact that we have the opportunity, the unparalleled opportunity, to put one of our health challenges that has dogged us for decades. It's been 40 years since AIDS began. And we have the opportunity to put this behind us. If we will just push through to the end, by 2030, we should have this behind us. We should not be thinking about this as we push for the 2063 Africa's agenda. So the Africa we want is an Africa free of AIDS, an Africa where everybody lives a healthy life in their future. This year's International Women's Day celebration on digital innovation and technology for gender equality is a big opportunity for us to strengthen our efforts and to leverage this technology to be able to fast-track us as we seek to achieve these SDGs. Sima Bahas, who is the Under-Secretary General, Executive Director of UN Women, right now holding this Commission on the Status of Women, calls this digital poverty, where it is disproportionately understood. I think all of you have said this, how the low levels of literacy and difficult conditions where women live, and they do so when we have the tools in our hands. We know that women across the world contribute to only 13%, and nearly 45% fewer women than men have access to the internet in sub-Saharan Africa. And yet we know how, if we put the tools in their hands, and we know countries, I'm from Kenya, and in Kenya, women have access to mobile technology and mobile banking. I think we're the highest banked women in society in our region. So we know it's possible for women to have access to this. We know it's possible for children to have access to technology, to access education. So what ends up happening with this digital divide is that we have an alarmingly high number of women and girls who are left out of the digital opportunities that they could have. From a health perspective and from the work that we do, excluding women and girls from digital participation restricts their access to life-saving information. You remember we all knew ABC, those of you who are old enough like me to remember the ABC messaging. We no longer see this around. And that has dire consequences in a region where we know how to prevent HIV, we know how to prevent sexually transmitted diseases and other health conditions, and yet we don't because of lack of information. The result of this is that girls and women are disproportionately affected by HIV. Today, 63% of everybody who lives with HIV in this entire region is a woman. 63%. 4,900 girls are infected every week in Africa. Every single week. And I know we thought that we had forgotten. We thought we were done because we have ARVs. But you still get sick before you take the ARVs. Eh? So as long as we are keeping that tap open, 4,900 girls every single week. It is about 3 times more girls' infections than boys. Many times we're told we forget about the boys. And maybe we do, but even as we do, the girls are so disproportionately affected than boys, that we have to pay special attention to the girls. In some of our countries, it's 4 times. In others, it is 5 times. In a country yesterday, we were talking 7 times girls infected more than boys. So they're not being infected by their age mates. We know this story from a long time ago. It is older men, and I won't look up now lest I see any older men in the room, but it's no older man. It is older men and not younger women, boys of the same age, who are infecting these girls. The factors that fuel this are those deep-seated issues that you raised, Your Excellency, up here. In Kenya, we call this the triple threat because not only is HIV infection an issue, but so is teenage pregnancy, so is gender-based violence. These are happening all at the same time. So is child marriage. In some regions, it's FGM. So these are pervasive conditions that girls have to deal with. Our report last year on HIV, we named it dangerous inequalities, and it highlighted these dangerous inequalities because these are the inequalities that make it near impossible for us to end AIDS and end all these different, achieve our SDGs and achieve the goals that we need to do so. And so at the UNAIDS, in partnership with others, including UNESCO, UNICEF, UNFPA, ourselves, UN Women, we have come up with an initiative that we call Education Plus. We launched the Education Plus initiative at the African Union last July, led by the President of Zambia, the Presidents of Chad and Senegal, and with the AU Commissioner himself, with the Organization of African First Ladies. And the Education Plus initiative seeks to accelerate investments to prevent HIV, violence, teenage pregnancy, by ensuring that these adolescent girls and young women have equal opportunities to access quality secondary education alongside key education and health services, and ultimately to support their economic autonomy and empowerment, that we can then imagine for them a life that is independent, that is strong, that enables them to go back and take care of themselves and their families and the society and contribute in as great a way as possible. The Secretary General has launched the Transform Education Summit. As part of this, we are engaged with his work, and it harnesses connectivity and really looks at how digital teaching and learning resources can contribute to the transformation and democratization of education. As we work to end AIDS, we are also looking at innovation and technology in terms of actual drugs. There is available in the West, across the West, if you have HIV, you can take an injection and for three months you don't care and worry about treatment. That's not the same here. Even though Zimbabwe and South Africa have passed the law to enable you to have long-acting PrEP, these are innovations in science and technology that we are working hard on and should push across our continent, so that women and girls have broader choices. The vaginal ring, there's all kinds of new tools that are on the table that we can expand along with technology, digital technology as we know it, to ensure that all have access and that we can broaden and prevent those infections which are unnecessary. So as I conclude, I just want to say this, and I quote Edward Burke: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Let me end with this study that we did. It's a study that we call the cost of inaction. This cost of inaction, we're still working on it across multiple countries, but as we did this study was done in South Africa, it was done in Zimbabwe, Mr. President, Your Excellency, and it showed that if you take the cost of violence against women, the cost of teenage pregnancy to the health system, etc., the lost time, and the cost of HIV in a teenage girl, and you compare that with the cost of staying and keeping that girl in school, it costs you more than double the cost of educating a girl than it costs for you to to deal with the consequences of teenage pregnancy, GBV, and HIV infection in this same girl. But all in all, it costs the economy of Zimbabwe 10% of its GDP to deal with these issues. It costs South Africa 10% of their GDP. It costs Zimbabwe 20% of your GDP if you do nothing and take no action against violence, against teenage pregnancy, against child marriage, against new infections in these young women and girls who are supposed to be the future that we are imagining would be the ones who take us to the future, who lead us here in the parliament, who lead our countries, who educate in schools, who do all the health providers. We are losing huge amounts because of not investing in these girls. And so for that, I thank you. The end of AIDS is here. Thank you.